We've already said hello to Liz Peek, the noted columnist. She remains at Newsmax New York, and we welcome in, although he's in the center of the screen, he should be lurching leftward. It's our good friend Ellis Henican, noted TV and radio commentator. So Ellis, I've been talking to veterans, I've been talking to military brass. Never before have we had an official announcement from the Pentagon on the time frame for an offensive. Can you defend this offensive announcement?
JD, first of all, I'm glad that Fred Fleitz corrected himself. This was not some leak out of the White House. The generals made an announcement. I find it highly unlikely that the generals in the Pentagon, our military, lifelong military leaders, are somehow, selling out the country, being traitors. You know what? This is part of the psychological effort to put pressure on ISIS, to gather up international support as an entirely proper military strategy, and to try to turn it into some wacko, evil political conspiracy is not only wrong, it is, I would say it's of questionable motives.
Well, Liz, let's just review what we learned in civics, and that is the military operates under civilian authority, the commander-in-chief, and what I heard mentioned yesterday was this was to put pressure on the Iraqis to step up and fight. Still, the question remains, was this wise?
Well, I suspect everything this White House does as being politically motivated. So I have to think it's partly a rebuttal of people who are critical of the president for not having a more aggressive stance against ISIS. But all I can say is, thank heavens these people weren't involved with D-Day, or we would be speaking French and German on the Champs-Elysees today, because this is, I thought, the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Stephen Ambrose notes in his wonderful biography of Eisenhower that Ike went to the war correspondents and said, guys, I just want you to know it's going to be June 5th. They had to delay it to June 6th. And the way Ambrose wrote it, he said every reporter put down their pad, and the senior among the correspondents said, General, why did you tell us? And Ike responded, because I know you're good Americans who want to protect fellow Americans. Ellis, mindful of this, should the press have self-censored this information of the military offensive, or was it smart, since I guess it had the official imprimatur of the Pentagon, to go ahead and pass along the date?
Well, what a quaint story that is from Stephen Ambrose. Those are the same reporters who hid JFK's philandering, right?
Well, wait a minute. Stephen Ambrose was no political conservative, and he didn't have...
This is...
So, okay, this is very good. So we're going to start demeaning Eisenhower and Ambrose. Go ahead, Ellis. Go ahead.
JD, I'm not discussing Stephen Ambrose's politics. That's not the point. Listen, think about what you all are saying, right? That the generals in the Pentagon at the highest levels of the American military are doing something to harm American foreign policy and American political issues. This isn't some White House aide, some political operative. These are the generals at the very highest levels of the Pentagon. I mean, my gosh, you're starting to sound like Rudy Giuliani on this stuff. You've got to reel in these conspiracies a little bit and not assume, because you hate Obama so much, that anything that is ever done by anyone in the United States military or anywhere else in the government is based on some kind of traitorous act. That's a silly argument. You can make a better argument.
You know, Ellis.
All right, I will make a better argument.
Go ahead, we got 30 seconds,
Ellis,
Liz.
you have to consider what we've been doing in Afghanistan and Iraq, where we took troops out inadvisedly, have actually cost Americans lives. So I don't think you can assume that every military move this president makes is well advised.
The generals are traitors? I don't think so.
Nobody said generals were traitors, but Ellis, even you...
Well, then why would they release the information?
Even you in your schooling understand that the military takes orders from the commander-in-chief. We're not talking conspiracies. We're not talking deep-seated hatred. And I'm sure as heck not here to impugn Stephen Ambrose or Dwight David Eisenhower. I'll leave that to you, Ellis. We'll come back with more of the discussion on the here and now next on America's Forum. We're back with Ellis Henican, the noted TV and radio commentator, and Liz Peek, who is here for the entire hour. So, Liz, what's your take? Is George W. Jeb's biggest obstacle?
Okay, well, I'm an economist by background, so I'll say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that the country is wary, obviously, of George W. Bush's policies. The Iraq War is the paramount among those. And I think Jeb has to distance himself from the sort of neocon, immediate gratification, military inventionist kind of position that GW took. However, the reason that Jeb Bush is a credible candidate in some ways, not just his family's presence, but the fact that George W. gets him by a lot of things that the conservatives don't like. They don't like Common Core, for example. They don't like his stance on immigration, but they're willing to hear him out, mainly because they still like George W. Bush.
Okay, so there's kind of a, there are two sides to the name Bush. Ellis, your take on what this means to the left and people like, I don't know, Hillary Clinton and Elizabeth Warren?
Well, listen, I have to fight my reflective tendency to understand that almost everything Dick Morris says is wrong. I think history teaches us that. So, so I hesitate a little bit to agree, but there's some truth to what he's saying on this one. Like it or not, Jeb is connected to W and his dad because, you know, that's how we know them. That's partly why they're there. The fact that their dad was a president is not an irrelevant fact in the rise of their own political lives. But it balances out in this way. There's no way to separate Hillary from Bill, right? I mean, if we decide in our country that we want to elect families over generations instead of individuals, and we seem for complex psychological reasons to be heading in that direction, you know what? We're stuck with all of them. And so yes, anything that the Jeb tries to sell, it's hard not to remember in the back of your mind that he had a brother and a daddy in that job before, and we see it through that lens. So yeah, Morris, hate to say this, but Morris is right at least to that extent.
A little less than 2 minutes remain. We're going to call in, since you raised the specter of Hillary, Ellis, we're going to bring in what Steve Forbes recently had to say on Bloomberg TV. Take a listen.
She's tied to it, and even though she served 4 years out of the 8 years, her tenure as Secretary of State, these things were brewing. The Iranian situation was brewing. The precipitous withdrawal from Iraq was under her watch. So she can't wash her hands of it, and she can try to do nuanced dances. Well, I'm really not there. But she's going to have to do more than that if she wants to be seen as a credible, independent figure.
So Liz, there's Steve Forbes saying it ain't only being named Clinton or having that last name, it's Benghazi and being Secretary of State for President Obama. Will that be too tough a hill for Hill to climb?
I think it's going to be a very tough hill to climb. She has already begun to distance herself from Obama's foreign policies. My guess is when she decides to run, she will come out swinging against many of his policies, which are so unpopular to most Americans. The polling is pretty clear on this. So, yeah, I think she has a lot to overcome.
All right, Ellis, final 30 seconds are yours, my man, and I won't interrupt.
Well, here's the good news for Hillary, right?
Okay.
I understand. Here's the good news for Hillary. Bill's a whole lot more popular than W is, right? Or than the elder George Bush is. Bill Clinton remains a hugely popular figure in this country. Even many of my Republican friends are now in their loathing of Obama frequently say, well, you know, Bill Clinton, he was much better. So in the end, it's a whole lot better hand that she's been dealt than the one that Jeb and some of the Republicans have, I think.
Well, one thing I'll agree with you on, Ellis, you said complex psychological reasons have us in this boat collectively. I have my doubts about the future, but I thank you both, and we're coming right back.